My dear, I hit the part where your smile broke me before I ever told you goodbye. Behind that kindness, a storm waited. I stayed silent while it shattered us both. I saw the crack, the truth. Their hands held promises, but their eyes never met mine. There was a shadow between us, but I was too afraid to speak its name. I loved what they showed me, but I feared what they were hiding. I carried their lies quietly, hoping you'd never see the weight in my chest. They wore my heart like a mask, the mask I never wanted to take off. I never told you how often I prayed for the part of them I lost. Love became a battlefield, and I was the soldier too tired to fight back. Their betrayal wasn't loud. It was the quiet absence in their every touch. I buried the truth beneath my smile, a secret grave where hope went to die. The hardest part was not the betrayal, but pretending it never happened. I saw the lie before the truth, and it broke me more than you know. Their heart was a locked room I never found the key to, until the door slammed. They never promised forever, only a carefully crafted illusion of it. My silence protected you, but destroyed the part of me that believed in us. The worst betrayal, when someone you love becomes a stranger in your own story. I swallowed the poison of their deceit, so you wouldn't taste the bitterness. The truth I hid is a scar, invisible but aching beneath my skin. They loved me in fragments, pieces I never learned how to fit back together. I carried the weight of their lies quietly, hoping to shield your heart. The space between us filled with things I never said, but you always felt. They were the silence after the last goodbye, loud in its finality. My love was a ghost in their hands, unseen, untouched, unloved. They broke promises softly, so I couldn't hear the shatter until it was too late. There was a betrayal that didn't need words. It lived in every broken glance. I pretended not to notice the cracks, but they swallowed me whole. They left with a smile, but behind it, untold lies. I loved the version of them they let me see. The rest was a secret war. My silence was the loudest confession, a confession you never heard. The betrayal was a slow unraveling, a thread pulled quietly in the dark. I couldn't tell you because the truth would have burned us both alive. They hid in plain sight. The person I loved, and the one who left. I kept their secrets, even when they tore me apart. The hardest truth. Sometimes love is just the story we tell ourselves to survive. Their hands held me close, but their heart was already somewhere else. I was just the shadow they left behind, forgotten but impossible to escape. I couldn't tell you, because I was still waiting for the person they pretended to be. There's a betrayal that never speaks. It lingers in the space between us. I carried the weight of what they never said, and that broke me more than words. I was a secret they never meant to share, a truth too painful to admit. The quiet betrayal, loving someone who already stopped loving you. My heart kept their lies. A silent witness to a love that died in silence. They loved me like a story, beautiful until the final page was ripped away. I held the truth like a secret flame, too fragile to burn everything down. Betrayal wasn't in what they said, but in what they never said at all. The hardest part was loving someone who was already gone. I couldn't tell you because I was afraid the truth would break your heart too. Their betrayal was a ghost, always near, but never seen until it vanished. I loved a lie wrapped in a smile, and the truth was the silence that followed. I held on to their promises, even when they slipped through my fingers like smoke. The one thing I couldn't say, they stopped fighting for us long before I did. My silence was a shield, protecting me from a truth I couldn't face. They never loved me enough to stay, but I loved them enough to wait. I was a secret they whispered in shadows. A truth too painful to speak aloud. The betrayal wasn't the end. It was the beginning of my silent unraveling. I couldn't tell you because the truth was a wound too deep to reveal. They left me with echoes, promise that died in the spaces between words. My heart was a battlefield, and their betrayal was the war I never saw coming. I loved them in silence, hoping the truth would never find its voice. The truth is a quiet thing. It breaks you softly, but completely. I carried their lies like a prayer, hoping one day they'd turn into truth. They loved me with one hand and took away with the other. My silence was the final goodbye. A secret I never dared to speak. I whispered your name in my silence, a prayer no one else heard. They were the secret I guarded, even when it burned me alive. The truth was a broken mirror, reflecting pieces I refused to face. I loved the space between their words more than their empty promises. Their betrayal was the cold shadow beneath every warm touch. I kept loving the part of them that no longer belonged to me. The hardest silence is the one that screams inside your broken heart. They never left me completely, just enough to fracture my soul. I buried the truth where only my tears could find it. Their love was a ghost story I told myself to sleep at night. I loved someone whose heart was already lost in another's arms. The betrayal was a secret they carried, and I paid the price. I held on to their smile, ignoring the storm brewing behind it. Their absence was a wound I dressed in quiet desperation. I loved the shadow they cast, long after they disappeared. The truth was a whispered lie between the spaces of our goodbye. They promised me forever, but only gave me fleeting moments. I was the silence they chose over the truth I deserved. Their betrayal was a cold breath against the warmth of my trust. I loved someone who stopped fighting while I still held the flame. The hardest confession. I waited for a love that was never mine. Their absence spoke louder than the words they never said. I buried the pain beneath smiles that fooled even myself. The truth I hid was the last thread holding me together. They left cracks in my soul no apology could ever mend. Loved them, they lived in my dreams. The betrayal was the silence after every unanswered call. I held their secrets like a fragile glass, afraid to shatter. Their love was a storm I never saw coming or surviving. I couldn't tell you because the truth would drown us both. I loved the promise of us even when it was just an illusion. Their absence echoed in the hollow spaces of my heart. The silence between us was louder than any argument. I was the secret they hoped would disappear with the night. Their betrayal was the shadow I chased, but could never outrun. I loved someone who stopped existing in the story we shared. The hardest truth. I was a stranger in the love I gave. I buried the pain where no one could see the cracks. They left me with questions I am still too afraid to ask. I held on to memories that turned to ash in my hands. Their love was a fragile flame snuffed out by silent betrayal. I couldn't tell you because some truths unravel the soul slowly. I loved a shadow dancing on the edges of fading light. The betrayal was a quiet thief stealing every piece of us. I stayed silent while they rewrote our story without me. Their absence was the echo of promises broken in silence. I loved the idea of forever, but they lived for the moment. The truth was a ghost I chased but never caught. They hid behind smiles while their heart wandered elsewhere. I held their lies like a prayer I couldn't let go. Their betrayal was the slow unraveling of everything I believed. I loved someone who had already closed the door on us. The hardest silence is the one where love dies unnoticed. I buried the truth beneath layers of forgotten dreams. They left with a smile. I loved the reflection of someone I wished they could be. Their absence was the loudest confession of all. I couldn't tell you because the truth would shatter my world. I held onto a love that was slipping like grains of sand. Their betrayal was the shadow beneath every tender word. I love the story that ended before it even began. The silence after them was a wound I learned to live with. They promised the stars, but left me in endless night. I was the secret they kept hidden from the world. And me. Their love was a flicker fading into darkness I couldn't fight. I couldn't tell you because some wounds bleed in silence forever. I loved someone whose heart was already breaking elsewhere. The betrayal was the quiet space where love used to live. I held their absence like a hollow ache inside my chest. They left me with shadows where light once lived. I loved the ghost of what we could never become. Their silence was the final goodbye I never heard. I buried the truth beneath a smile that cracked every day. They broke me softly, like a whisper, turning into a scream. I couldn't tell you because the truth was a wound too raw. I loved someone who was already gone long before they left. The hardest truth: love can die without a single word spoken. They hid their betrayal behind the mask of affection. I held on to memories even as they turned cold and distant. Their absence was the loudest sound in my lonely nights. I loved the possibility of us more than the reality of pain. Apart from within, I stayed silent because I feared losing myself in the truth. If this touched your soul, don't scroll, like, comment your favorite quote, and subscribe for more. I still hear their silence louder than any apology they never gave. Loving them was a beautiful lie I wore until it became unbearable. Their absence screamed the truth I refused to admit out loud. I told myself their betrayal was just a shadow, until it consumed me. They were the wound I never showed, bleeding quietly inside my chest. I buried what they did beneath layers of pretend peace. The real heartbreak was loving someone who stopped fighting without warning. I held on to memories, but they slipped through like grains of forgotten sand. They gave me reasons to stay, and left without a single explanation. I loved their ghost long after they became a stranger. Their lies were soft knives, cutting deeper than any scream. I waited for a truth that never wanted to be found. The betrayal was a slow poison I drank to keep you safe. They never promised forever, only borrowed time I didn't know I was lending. I was the secret they buried, hoping no one would ever dig me up. The hardest part wasn't losing them. It was losing the version I loved. Their betrayal was the silence between our last words. I held their broken promises like fragile glass. Too sharp to touch, too beautiful to let go. I loved a shadow that faded before I could grasp it. They left traces of love in places only I could find. My heart spoke the truth they were too afraid to confess. The hardest confession is loving someone who no longer sees you. I never told you how their absence filled every empty space inside me. Their love was a story written in disappearing ink. I kept their secrets locked away, even when captured their tools. The betrayal wasn't loud. It was the quiet I couldn't escape. I loved someone who was already halfway gone. The truth hid in the pauses between their words. I was a chapter they skipped, but I lived every line. Their betrayal was a night without stars, endless and suffocating. I couldn't tell you because the truth was wrapped in unbearable silence. I stayed because I believed in a lie more than my own heart. They touched me with kindness, but their soul was a stranger. I loved the possibility of us, not the reality we became. Their absence taught me what betrayal sounds like without words. I carried their silence like a wound that never healed. The hardest truth: loving someone who never truly saw you. I never told you how their betrayal felt like losing myself. They left me questions I'll never know how to answer. I loved a story that ended before I even read the last page. Their promises were whispers I kept hoping to hear louder. I held their lies like a secret prayer, hoping for salvation. The silence they left was the loudest scream I've ever heard. I was the secret they swore never to tell, and never did. Their betrayal was a wound, invisible to everyone but me. I couldn't tell you because the truth was a fracture too deep to fix. I stayed silent while their love slipped through my fingers like smoke. They gave me pieces of themselves, but kept the rest hidden. I loved someone who's already slipping away in every touch. Their absence was a language I learned to understand, alone. I buried the truth so deep, even I forgot where it was. The hardest part was seeing them fade without a fight. I loved the promise of us more than the reality of them. Their betrayal was the space between every goodbye we never said. I held on to their shadow long after they stopped holding me. I couldn't tell you because the truth would shatter more than hearts. They left the silence so loud, I still hear it every day. I love the idea of forever, but they only gave me moments. Their lies were delicate threads, unraveling the fabric of us. I was the secret they kept to protect themselves, not me. Hardest truth is realizing you were a stranger to someone you loved. I never told you how betrayal tastes like tears no one sees. They promised stars that gave me the darkness between them. I carried their absence like a ghost in every crowded room. The silence after their leaving was the loudest betrayal of all. I loved someone who was already lost before we ever began. Their truth was a shadow I chased but never caught. I couldn't tell you because some wounds bleed in silence. I held onto a love that was already fading into dust. Their betrayal was the echo of a lie I dared not speak. I loved the reflection they showed me, not the person behind it. They left me with questions and no answers to hold. The hardest part was loving a stranger wearing their face. I buried the truth in the silence of forgotten nights. I stayed because I feared losing the ghost of us. Their betrayal was a quiet storm that wrecked everything inside me. I loved someone who never truly belonged to me. The truth I hid is a scar only my soul can see.